I think the unfortunate and irresponsible decision taken by Meta is one that is having something of an impact on Canadians' ability to access news, and that is disappointing. I mean, we have been keen to try and support local journalism and access journalism wherever we can, but the decision that they've made, which is of course a business decision that they're entitled to make, has had something of an impact on Canadians' ability to access news. Now, that said, we are of course seeing, as a result of the agreement with Google, an opportunity to be able to support journalism and access journalism in different ways. So I think we've got to keep working to ensure that Canadians have access to good quality journalism and
W-
news.
Yeah, you said it's had an effect. What effect has it had, the meta ban?
Well, I think when people have had a habit of going to certain places to access their news, so it takes time to change those habits. It takes time for people to. If people are surprised, they go to Facebook and they don't see the news that they're, the things that they're used to seeing. Of course, it takes time to adjust.
I think some people have said it's been life and death. There have been forest fires that people have been trying to flee without getting the information they need on Facebook. Disinformation right now in the UK sparking riots. Is it just about forming new habits, or is there a real problem happening here?
I think you raised the issue of disinformation, and I think this is a really important thing. Whereas disinformation was that we're seeing it a lot in a lot of cases, that disinformation was being spread on X. So whether it's X or Facebook or other places, people are going to the spread of disinformation and the presence of news are two very different things, right? So I mean, I think it's important to separate the two issues out. Whether or not people have access to news on meta platforms versus the spread of misinformation were being spread on meta platforms and on X and other places long before Facebook made the business decision to get out of the business of showing news, not just in Canada but in other countries as well.
Okay, I'm not sure how you can separate them in the absence of no real news. Disinformation can flourish, but how well do you think your new legislation has worked in this regard? Meta
Well,
obviously doesn't want to
hold on
pay.
a second though. News is there, right? News, you can go to the CBC website, you can access
No,
news, you
I'm
can go to
talking
different
about on that platform. On
on
that
that.
platform.
Look, the decision that Meta made to get out of the news business in Canada and in other countries was a decision that they made on the basis of their stakeholders. Their stakeholder is their shareholder. That's how they made their decision, right? That is a decision that they made on their own, and our job is to make sure that we take care of our stakeholder, which is Canadian citizens, and ensure that they have access to finding news and access to the news that they need.
And how well is that working?
Well, I think if you look at the agreement that we have struck with Google, which is best in class right now, and will always be best in class based on the way in which that agreement has been crafted, is going to deliver $100 million of support to journalism in this country every single year going forward. And so I think if you look at that, that is one immediate response to the way in which the legislation has had an impact, positive impact, on supporting the news ecosystem in this country.
What do we do about Meta? Do you just give up on that and let news be shared there for the groups who want to share it there, including news makers like Indigenous publications here in Saskatchewan?
I think our door is always open to Meta. If they want to come and have a conversation with us, if they want to do the responsible thing and work out an agreement as Google did, our door is always open. We have said that time and again. We can't control the business decisions that Meta makes in Canada and in other countries. That's their prerogative. But we're going to keep working hard with other platforms. We're going to keep working hard to have the door open to Meta if they are interested in having that conversation, because it is important for all these voices from across the country, from coast to coast to coast, whether it's Indigenous communities, whether it's other communities, small rural communities. And this is where the CBC, by the way, plays a very important role to ensure that that access is available.
But some of those smaller publications, including here in Saskatchewan, Eagle Feather News, say it's been really hurt by this move by the federal government.
Well, what I would say is that part of the legislation was to ensure that funds were available to small independent journalists, whether it's through the deal with Google, through the local journalism initiative, which by the way we've re-upped, that allow many of these outlets to have access to the funds that they need to stay in business and to keep providing news. People can say, "Oh, it's because of this legislation." It's actually untrue. The decision that was made by Facebook to get out of the news business has happened long before the legislation was passed or implemented. That's that is a decision that they made, and they've made it, as I've said before, in other countries, not just in Canada. Our job is to make sure that other platforms, other avenues are available, and we're going to keep doing that by supporting things, supporting small organizations like through the local journalism initiative. And again, we're going to make sure that there is a strong public broadcaster in the CBC that is well funded and well supported. You look at what the Conservatives are talking about; they want to cut all of these measures and leave it to the market to decide. The problem with that is that all of these small outlets would have no chance in an environment where you have a government that says we don't believe in supporting local news. We don't believe in supporting a public broadcaster, and we believe that it should be a world in which only the strong survive. And what that does is disproportionately impacts Indigenous news, disproportionately impacts small communities. And our job is to make sure that Canadians have those choices.
What do you do if Meta never knocks on your door again?
Well, that's life. That's a decision that they've made. There are other places, and that's going to be why the initiatives that we are taking are so important to strengthen local news, to ensure that they have a robust way to reach Canadians, making sure again there are strong public broadcasters that support through LJI and other initiatives are in place. And of course, ensuring that deals like the one we have with Google continue to support local journalism. The decision that Meta makes, whether it's in Canada or elsewhere, is going to be a business decision that does what they think is going to be best for their shareholders. Make no mistake, they're not an altruistic enterprise. They're not a not for profit. They are in the business of making money. They are going to do everything they can to make money for their shareholders. That is where there is a divergence. Our job and our mandate is to make sure that Canadians have what they need, not to put money into the pockets of big tech.
What would make you change your mind and repeal the Online News Act?
I think that's. I think it's. I think you would need to see a sea change in the way in which the world operated. You're not going to see that, right? Because you have an entire ecosystem of platforms, large tech platforms, who's who are doing everything they can to get as much content as they can to share without paying for it. And until and unless there is a world in which news agencies, journalists, creatives are saying, hey, listen, we don't want to be compensated for the work that we're doing. Let them take our content and profit from it without giving us a dime. Our job is to make sure that we're going to protect those small news agencies, large news agencies, large journalism large journalists, journalism organizations, and creatives in this country. Right? We cannot allow for the news sector in this country to die. We cannot allow for the creative sector in this country to die. And our government is going to make sure that those supports are in place.
What about those who are dying in the meantime?
Well, again, if people would have you believe that somehow Facebook's business decision is driving that, then I mean that's something that we need to that Facebook needs to answer. Right? We have been consistent in our support. We have been consistent in making sure that news agencies and journalists have the support that they need. What is important is that in a changing landscape where being online matters, we're ensuring that you are where Canadians are in terms of accessing their news, making sure that our government is giving those organizations the ability to transition well is really important. And that goes for the CBC, right? Part of the exercise that is being undertaken by the minister right now is to ensure that the CBC is ready to take on the 21st and 22nd century, to be ready to be a public broadcaster that is available in new ways. And that is the work that all news agencies and all journalists need to be thinking about. And we're going to be there to support them in that transition.
Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much.